A special report on the hidden physical injuries devastating the lives of our war veterans and their families. Traumatic brain injuries can be caused by blasts from explosions. The shock waves can damage the brain, with repeated exposure increasing the risk. It can be very hard to diagnose, though, and is often confused with post-traumatic stress disorder, but its effects can be frightening. The wife of one affected veteran is leading calls for TBIs to be properly recognised and treated. And a warning that this report from our correspondent Geraint Vincent starts with one former soldier's descriptions of the suicidal thoughts his brain injuries have caused.
Craig Harrison spent more than 20 years in the British Army. He served in some of the most challenging environments on earth. But his life since he left the armed forces has been so difficult, thoughts of ending it have become part of his routine.
Massive thinking of suicide all the time. All the time. I suffer from suicide ideation, so I constantly think about it all the time. Easiest way out. I'm constantly in pain. From my hips, from especially my brain, you know. And I get angry sometimes and I hit myself. That's how I cope. I just get so frustrated and angry with myself, and I don't know where to put this anger, so I just take it out on myself.
Craig was part of a sniper team. During the course of one tour of duty in Afghanistan, he was knocked unconscious when a bullet struck his helmet. A few days later, both his arms were broken when the vehicle he was travelling in was blown up. But the really serious damage had been done inside his head. And that was obvious to Craig's wife, Tanya, when he got back home.
I had really bad headaches. I just felt foggy in my actions. She noticed it before I did. I thought I was all right. You know, she noticed my change. You know, my isolation, my argumentative side. Not sleeping right. I didn't know much about TBIs. If you go up to anybody, I think I said to my GP, I've got a TBI. And he, what's a TBI? You know, oh, it's a traumatic brain injury. Oh, right.
The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were fought over many years, and a favourite weapon of the insurgencies in those countries was the improvised explosive device. Booby-trap bombs buried in the ground or hidden in buildings, triggered by the pressure of a footstep. But explosions big and small are, of course, the currency of all modern warfare, from airstrikes coming in to the ignitions which propel the bombs going out. The shockwaves from the blasts shake soldiers' brains, so that even if they escape obvious physical injury, the delicate balance of the mind can be upset. That effect has a name: blast-related mild traumatic brain injury.
If it's a particularly strong blast force that moves somebody, we're going to lose consciousness. We're going to see those acute signs that we'd probably call more a concussive injury. And to a degree, these might be as severe enough to cause bleeds on the brain. At a lower level, these waves will translate through the brain and translate through the body, but cause those kind of vibrations, which will cause micro-tearing of the brain tissue. We're talking about changes of cognitive function, personality and behaviour from immediacy of that injury, and that can be quite devastating for both the person that's been exposed to that blast, but also their family, their friends, everybody around them, because we see a sudden change.
So William, you can take the meds up for me?
Every morning at Kate England's home in Oxfordshire, her sons perform a daily ritual, getting their dad's medication ready and taking it up to him. Kate's husband is a veteran of Iraq whose struggle with mild traumatic brain injury meant that he couldn't face meeting us when we went to meet his family.
James doesn't really talk very much about everything. He's not that guy. He's not that guy that likes to talk about his feelings. He's not that guy that likes to talk about how he's feeling, if he's in pain or if he's tremoring or if he's struggling with his his speech. He finds the whole thing embarrassing. And I love my husband. I love my husband to bits. But because of everything, he doesn't always understand the situation, which then the 13-year-old becomes the adult in the room. Yeah. Difficult. Yeah.
Frustrated at the lack of support for people like her husband, Kate has become a campaigner, trying to get mild traumatic brain injury in veterans properly recognised and properly treated.
I just had enough because it was really broken down my family completely, and it was either me speak up or something was, my family was going to be gone completely, and James was probably going to be in the justice system or dead.
The Ministry of Defence told us that they're working with international partners and spending £4 million on advancing the diagnosis, management and rehabilitation of patients with mild traumatic brain injury. But the authorities are playing catch-up. We don't know how many veterans in the UK are living with this condition, but we do know its effects can be devastating. Craig has other issues with his mental health as a result of his years of service, but he is fortunate in one sense. He was diagnosed with mild traumatic brain injury by military doctors before he left the army. He at least knows what his problem is. There will be other veterans who are living with the same frightening symptoms who don't. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
Our science correspondent Martin Stew is here. Martin, how difficult is it to diagnose brain injury from blasts?
Yeah, well, this is the really difficult bit because a lot of the symptoms like anxiety, irritability and insomnia completely overlap with PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, which incidentally Craig has also been diagnosed with. And it's a condition, PTSD, that civilian doctors know much more about, and therefore they're much more likely to diagnose that. The other challenge is that symptoms often present many years after you've left the military. Now, if you have a major head trauma, you may see the symptoms straight away, but with these mild blast traumas, it's the shock waves which cause this microscopic damage to brain cells, and that builds slowly over the years. Which leads us to the question that Geraint posed there: how many people could this affect? And the answer is, we simply do not know. If we look to America, where they've done more research, the Department of Defence says around 400,000 military personnel will have had some form of mild blast trauma since 2000. Now, obviously, their military is far bigger than ours, and there is some claims that that number may be inflated by people looking for compensation. However, we are probably looking at thousands in this country. And the key take-home is, in America, they are taking action. So if you newly join the military, you have a brain scan so they can monitor any changes. They're also adapting how they do training with less exposure to major blasts. At the moment in the UK, we're not doing those things. And while, of course, you can't control a war zone, there is growing pressure on the government to try and minimise risk where they can and support those people who need it.
All right, Martin, thank you.